everything we thought we knew about the Epstein case was just a widespread manipulation tactic, a way to control the narrative so that the real story didn't get out. For legal reasons, this is all alleged and my own opinions. Let's get that straight. In no way am I trying to undercut or discredit any of the survivors of Epstein. But ever since I have directly tied Jack Scarola to Growing Together, an obvious trafficking front, warning light has been blinking nonstop in my head. And after Sasha Riley came forward, guys, we have started to learn the depths of the depravity and how far and deep reaching all of these connections are. And up until this point, I know a lot of us have been questioning, why was it only a certain type of victim that had come forward? Like only girls and only over a certain age. There have been dozens of things that just haven't sat right with me, and I know I'm not alone on that. There's so much stuff I have to talk about, I have to break it up into 3 parts. 2 parts on the lawyers, 1 for a timeline. To save time in this video so I don't have to keep repeating myself, I do recommend going and watching this video I posted, as well as going back and watching the last video that I posted about Scott Rothstein. Put it all on a playlist together. And once I'm done filming everything, I'm gonna make a compilation and put it on YouTube. Bradley J. Edwards has been the face of the survivors for decade now. And according to this email from 2020, out of the 32 survivors that had come forward at that point, 22 of them were represented by Brad. But what if I were to tell you that Bradley Edwards was not the first lawyer to bring the lawsuits against Epstein? In fact, the first 3 lawsuits were filed by an attorney named Jeffrey Herman. These were the only 3 civil suits that were filed before Jeffrey pled guilty. And it was a law firm that specialized in victims of SA. And yet if you ask online, they all claim that Edwards was the one who filed these suits. In fact, Bradley Edwards didn't get involved until after Courtney Wild contacted the FBI because Epstein's counsel was trying to depose her. They actually provided her pro bono counsel. Just days before Epstein's deal was solidified, that's when Edwards got in contact with the prosecutor's office, telling them that he was now representing Courtney Wild and Sarah Ransom. So why did Courtney Wild seek out Brad's help? Why did she choose him over the firm that actually specialized in SA? Now, both Courtney and Edwards say that she was referred to him by a friend. So I wanted to dig into his history to see what would lead someone to go with him. And I gotta tell y'all, he's actually pretty cagey about his past pre-2009. It wasn't until I found the lawsuit that Epstein had filed against Bradley Edwards and Scott Rothstein in 2009 that I got my answers. After passing the bar in 2002, Bradley Edwards started working as an assistant state attorney at the Broward State Attorney's Office. He then spent 3 years working at a corporate and insurance law firm, working out of Florida and Alabama. According to Epstein's lawsuit, he formed this limited liability company on April 16, 2007. According to my research, he didn't actually file it with the state until January 25th, 2008. Do we think that's a coincidence that that is the day after the very first lawsuit was filed against Epstein? A lawsuit that was filed by the parents. Now I looked up the address that Bradley Edwards filed that under, and it was just out of his own personal house, which is odd because the whole purpose of an LLC is to create a legal shield from your personal assets. And I don't understand a lot of what LLCs are, but what I understand is something feels wrong here. And who would recommend Courtney Wild go to this very brand new law firm? And how many 20-year-olds know people with lawyers to begin with? Which brings me back to Jack Scarola.
That could happen and did happen here in Palm Beach County.
Jack Scarola is not holding back. He's been representing some of Jeffrey Epstein's underage victims since the first allegations surfaced in 2005.
Wait, since 2005? As I've shown you guys in the past, not only has Jack Scarola represented Growing Together in horrible lawsuits, but he has also represented employees and children from Growing Together in completely unrelated lawsuits. And in this police report dated 4/13/06, someone from DCSF called the cops and reported child abuse, with that date occurring from 05 to 06, where the mother put her daughter in Growing Together Treatment Center on 3/10/06, and Baker acted her on 4/7, just 5 days before the cops showed up. She had met Epstein 2 years prior to that. And I've talked about how Growing Together, they forced these children into abusive situations and make them confess to things. 100%, there's no way the people at Growing Together didn't know about Jeffrey Epstein. It's also the place she escaped from and ended up in the clutches of Ron Eppinger, who, after she was rescued after being trafficked for 6 months, her dad picked her up from the train station, called her names, and then took her back to Growing Together. And as far back as 1975, they knew that Ron Eppinger was running drugs and trafficking girls for the mob. In fact, there was a wealth of evidence against Ron Eppinger, but the Assistant Attorney General did not want to go further with the case, even though there was so much evidence. Even in 1990, instead of getting him for any sort of trafficking or anything, Broward County just charged him with ticket fraud, and he got community service. Eppinger admitted 2 FBI agents undercover as well as criminal informants that he was running money and girls for the Genovese crime family. That's an entire other monster I'm not even going to cover right now, because I bring this to your attention because guess who else has admitted to running money for the mob? This guy! At this time, Scott Rothstein was in the witness protection program in prison, cooperating with the Fed, so he's admitting to everything. And he specifically talks about all of his political connections in the Broward Sheriff's Office. Considering this man was the state attorney for Broward County for like 50 effing years, I'm gonna guess that he was also in their pocket. And yes, he worked under him. Keep in mind that Jack Scarola was also a chief felony prosecutor for Palm Beach for the state attorney's office. Now in 2014, Virginia Roberts met with David Boies of the law firm Boies, Schiller, and Flexner. And that's when all of the lawsuits really started to come in. I'm gonna get into all of those lawsuits when I do the timeline video. It's at this point where Virginia publicly accuses Alan Dershowitz. And that's when Alan Dershowitz flat out accuses all of the lawyers of being a part of a $1 billion extortion scheme. And I don't think he's wrong. For reasons that will become clear later on, Epstein had dropped his lawsuit against Rothstein and Edwards at this point. While I was doing a background check on Scott Rothstein, I stumbled on this. That is Scott Rothstein working for Boies Schiller. We have no idea the context for that. That prompted me to look into their law firm a lot harder. They got their big start representing the DOJ in the antitrust lawsuit against Microsoft. And some of you might remember I did a video a while back talking about how Larry Ellison was gunning for Microsoft. Yes, as in the person who's going to own this app tomorrow. Even going to extremes to assist the Department of Justice in their antitrust investigation of him. They also represented Blackwater CEO Eric Prince, who's Betsy DeVos's brother. They also represented Gore in the Supreme Court case about Bush versus Gore. David Schoen also worked on that case, and he also represented Donald Trump in his second impeachment trial. And not only did they represent Harvey Weinstein, who was also represented by Marty Weinberg, one of Epstein's other lawyers, they were accused of not only trying to silence the victims speaking out against Weinstein, but Boies hired a private intelligence company out of Israel to spy on the victims and the reporters who were investigating. And it is essentially run by former Mossad. They paid off the prosecutors, they paid off Cuomo. Oh, I'm sorry. They shortly received donations after dropping all of their questions. And the other founding partner, Jonathan Schiller, not only is his architect's son married to the ex-wife of Mortimer Zuckerberg, the Canadian billionaire associated with Jeffrey Epstein, but his son Josh, who's also a partner in the law firm, is married to the sister of the wife of Gavin Newsom. I have been suspecting for a long time that Gavin Newsom is a plant, because guess who his ex-wife is? Kimberly Ann Guilfoyle. That's right, Don Jr.'s ex-fiancee that he got tired of, so they gave her a job as the ambassador to Greece. And they didn't get divorced because of differences. They got divorced because they were living on opposite coasts. You know who else used to work at this law firm? Gavin Newsom's chief of staff, who was the director of the Clinton-Kane transition team and a former partner. Another former partner is Kristen Gillibrand. Y'all remember her? The woman who supported Cuomo even after the dozens of women came out against him? And after Mamdani won the mayor race against the candidate that she endorsed, she didn't come together and close ranks. She condemned his defense of pro-Palestinian advocates using the term Antifada. Y'all remember how Donald Trump had that one trial about the insurrection? It never went to trial because the judge was like, well, we'll see what the appeals court says about that before we actually even have a trial. Yep, she was a partner too. And yes, Hunter Biden used to work for them. And according to one of my sources, Hunter Biden is involved in all this in a big way. Which now it makes sense why he was saying those things about Melania Trump a while back with his full chest and without fear. Why Biden actually pardoned him. And why nothing happened in the Epstein case under Joe Biden. I mean, I could do more, but I'm going to leave you with this for now. Remember how I said Scott Rothstein's in prison under witness protection program? He tried to get it changed in the courts in 2018, but they denied him. Well, maybe somebody can explain to me why Scott Rothstein has a phone number associated with him now. After being off the board since 2008, suddenly he's got a phone number in 2023, which just so happens to be the same year that the little boy that he adopted mysteriously died. We have to start questioning things because they have spent maybe hundreds of years learning how to control and manipulate us, specifically to cover up whatever the fuck it is they've been doing.